What if the most important change in your life didn't begin with a new job, a new relationship, or a new city, but with a single experience that made the walls inside your mind feel less solid? For some people, that's exactly how psilocybin, the psychedelic compound in so-called magic mushrooms, is described. Not as a party drug, not as an escape, but as an experience that can feel so emotionally intense, so meaningful, and so deeply personal that afterward, life itself seems rearranged. Colors feel more alive. Relationships feel more fragile and more precious. Nature feels less like scenery and more like family. And the voice in your head, the one that constantly judges, compares, and controls, can suddenly go quiet. That's why people often say the same thing after a psychedelic experience. I didn't just see something, I saw my life differently. But there's a problem with the way this topic is usually discussed. One side treats shrooms like a miracle, the other treats them like pure danger, and both miss the more interesting truth. Psilocybin can produce experiences that feel deeply healing or meaningful for some people, but that does not mean every insight is true, every trip is safe, or every person should go anywhere near it. Because the real story isn't just about getting high, it's about what happens when the brain's normal filters loosen, when your sense of self becomes less rigid, and when life, for a few hours, stops looking familiar. So what is the positive effect people are talking about? Oddly enough, it may not be pleasure in the normal sense, it may be perspective. Because many people don't describe psilocybin as simply making them feel good, they describe it as making them feel awake. Not awake in the caffeinated sense, awake in the existential sense. As if they had been sleepwalking through habits, anxieties, distractions, and emotional defenses, and then, for a moment, they stepped outside the machinery. And when they came back, they saw the machinery more clearly. That may be one reason these experiences can feel so important. Researchers have repeatedly found that psilocybin can create what they call mystical-type experiences, states often marked by unity, interconnectedness, peace, transcendence, and a powerful feeling that the experience revealed something deeply real. And under supportive conditions, these experiences have been associated with lasting positive changes in mood, attitudes, and behavior. That's where the word realization comes in. Because after experiences like this, people often come back with a different relationship to the same life they had before. Not necessarily a new life, but new eyes. They may realize, I am not the same thing as my thoughts. That one is huge. Most of us live as if every anxious thought deserves obedience. Every insecurity deserves belief. Every mental loop deserves attention. But some people describe psilocybin as temporarily weakening that identification. The thought still appears. The fear still appears. The memory still appears. But it no longer feels like an absolute command. It feels like weather passing through awareness. And that shift alone can be enormous. Another realization people often describe is this: I have been trying to control life so tightly that I stopped living it. That can show up in 1,000 forms. Perfectionism, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of death, fear of losing status, fear of not being enough. And then suddenly, in the middle of a psychedelic experience, the control strategy itself becomes visible. Not as strength, but as armor. And for some people, that armor briefly falls away. That can be beautiful. It can also be terrifying. Because when the usual defenses soften, what comes up is not always bliss. Sometimes it's grief, sometimes guilt, sometimes loneliness. Sometimes all the feelings a person has been too busy to feel. That's part of why these experiences can feel meaningful. They don't always numb pain. Sometimes they force a confrontation with it. And that confrontation, in the right context, can feel like honesty for the first time in years. So why do people sometimes come back saying they love life more? Because the experience can make ordinary things feel newly visible. The people you've ignored, the beauty you stopped noticing, the time you keep assuming you have, the way your habits shape your reality, the distance between what you say matters and how you actually live. In controlled studies, many participants have rated their psilocybin sessions among the most personally meaningful or spiritually significant experiences of their lives. And follow-up research has found that some report lasting positive changes in attitudes, behavior, gratitude, openness, and interpersonal closeness. That helps explain a common post-trip shift. A person may stop obsessing so much over performance and start caring more about presence. Less about winning, more about meaning, less about image, more about connection. Less about how do I optimize my life and more about what kind of life is actually worth living. That doesn't mean psilocybin hands people universal truth. It means it can change the emotional weight of certain truths they may have already known, but never really felt. Everyone knows they will die. Not everyone feels that in a way that changes how they love. Everyone knows relationships matter. Not everyone feels that deeply enough to put down the phone and call their mother. Everyone knows nature is beautiful. Not everyone feels connected enough to stop treating the world like dead material. A psychedelic experience can make those ideas feel immediate instead of abstract. And that emotional immediacy may be exactly why some people describe it as life-changing. Now, it's important not to oversell this. The evidence here is promising but not magical. Clinical research suggests psilocybin-assisted therapy may help some people with depression, anxiety related to serious illness, and some substance use problems, especially in structured settings with psychological support. But the results are mixed. The samples have often been small. Long-term outcomes still need more study. And psilocybin is not yet an approved standard treatment in many places. That matters because the internet tends to flatten everything into a slogan. Shrooms cure depression. Shrooms unlock your true self. Shrooms will change your life. But real science is more cautious than that. A better way to say it is this. Psilocybin appears capable of producing unusually intense, sometimes enduring shifts in mood, perspective, and meaning for some people, especially under carefully managed conditions. That's impressive, and it is not the same as saying it works for everyone, and it is definitely not the same as saying it's harmless. Because the same thing that can feel profound can also feel destabilizing. Psilocybin experiences are unpredictable. They can involve fear, panic, confusion, paranoia, disturbing imagery, nausea, increased heart rate, and poor sleep. And for some people, especially those with certain mental health vulnerabilities, they can be dangerous. And that's why set and setting matter so much. Not as a trendy phrase. As a safety principle, your mindset matters, your environment matters, your mental health history matters, who is with you matters, what else is in your system matters. In therapeutic research, these sessions are not treated casually. They typically involve preparation, support during the experience, and integration afterward. And maybe that's the most mature way to think about this. Not as a shortcut to enlightenment, but as a tool powerful enough to help some people re-experience life from a different angle, and powerful enough to go very wrong when treated with arrogance. Because a realization is not automatically wisdom. Feeling that something is profound does not prove it is true. Feeling connected to the universe does not solve your trauma. Feeling love for humanity does not automatically make you a better person next week. What changes your life is not only the experience, it's what you do with it after. That may be the least glamorous part of the story, but it's probably the most important. If someone comes back from an intense experience with one clear realization that they need to be more honest, more present, more forgiving, or more alive, then the real work begins the next morning. Do they change how they speak to their partner? Do they stop numbing themselves every evening? Do they finally grieve what they lost? Do they spend less time performing and more time paying attention? Do they build a life that matches what they say they value? Because without integration, even a beautiful revelation can become just another dramatic memory. And with integration, even one honest insight can quietly reorder a life. Maybe that's the deepest positive effect people are trying to describe. Not that psilocybin gives them a new world, but that it briefly removes the filters that made them blind to the one they already had. The people, the pain, the beauty, the time, the fragility, the love. And for a moment, life stops feeling automatic. It feels astonishing again. That doesn't make psychedelics a miracle. It doesn't make them safe for everyone. And it doesn't mean every trip contains truth. But it may explain why some people come back speaking more softly, crying more easily, fearing death a little less, and caring far less about things that once ruled them. Because sometimes the most powerful change is not learning something new. It's remembering what mattered before you got distracted.